The yellow china marker snaps between my fingers just as Owen points across the launch table and says, "You're slowing us down." A fleck of wax lands on the cuff of his white shirt. Behind him, Hearthland Storage's new dashboard glows on a 60-inch screen. Green status lights, tidy sample tenants, gates waiting to be activated at 140 properties. There are 18,402 records that shouldn't be there, I say. Owen looks at the three Hearthland executives. Then he looks at my badge. "You've blamed every delay on some new technicality." "It isn't a technicality if they're live records." "You're done, Mara." His voice stays calm, almost gentle, effective now. He fires me before the client. For a moment, all I can see is the broken marker in my hand and a bright yellow crescent pressed into my palm. Daniel gave me my first box of those pencils 6 years ago when his brother hired me. I wonder which one of them he'll believe when Owen calls him. I set both pieces beside the printed launch checklist. I close my laptop, slide it toward Gatewise's attorney, and pick up my canvas tool bag. My warnings are still time-stamped. That is why I leave without arguing. The launch room occupies the polished end of Gatewise's office, where the carpet stops showing coffee stains and the chairs acquire chrome arms. As I cross it, Hearthland's Chief Operating Officer, Evelyn Shaw, turns one page of the packet I gave her that morning. She has a silver bob, narrow reading glasses, and the unnerving stillness of someone who listens to the part of a sentence you hoped would pass unnoticed. "Mara," she says. Owen answers for me. "Legal will coordinate any transition questions." Evelyn keeps her eyes on me. "Did you authorize the notification queue?" "No." "Why not?" Owen rises. "We're not going to conduct an exit interview in front of a customer." I look at Evelyn. "The queue is disabled. So is the gate controller bridge." "For how long?" "Until someone signs the exceptions." Owen's jaw tightens. "Badge." He holds out his hand. I unclip it. The plastic card has my worst professional photograph on it, taken after an overnight deployment when one eye was swollen from hotel soap. Beneath the picture, in block letters, it says Mara Vance, Director of Implementation. Owen drops it on top of my laptop. "Lena will walk you out." Lena from Office Operations appears near the door carrying a padded envelope, as if she had been standing just beyond the glass with it already prepared. Her face is blotched around the nose. She and I once spent 40 minutes crawling under desks because Owen wanted every visible cable gone before an investor tour. "I'm sorry," she whispers. "Don't be. I know where the elevator is." My tool bag bumps against my hip as we walk. Inside are an Ethernet adapter, 2 flashlights, a roll of painter's tape, aspirin, 3 granola bars crushed nearly into flour, and the little brass key I use to open old gate cabinets when property managers misplace theirs. I have carried the bag through rain, airport security, loading docks, and one memorable Texas property where an automatic arm came down on our rental car. At the elevators, Lena presses the button twice. "You were right about the notification queue," she says. "Don't say that in the hallway." She looks up at the black camera dome in the ceiling. The elevator hasn't arrived when the front doors open behind us. 4 people enter with Hearthland visitor badges and hard-sided laptop cases. The first is Priya Desai, Hearthland's Director of Information Security. I recognize her from the remote review that Owen cut short on Monday. With her are 2 analysts and a broad man in a gray suit whose badge reads, Corporate Security. Evelyn comes out of the launch room. "Priya," she calls. "I want the tenant lookup performed live from the test account." Owen follows her. "We can provide a controlled export." "No export. Open it." Priya's gaze moves from Owen to my tool bag, then to Lena's padded envelope. "Has access changed since the review began?" she asks. Owen says, "We've had a personnel transition. I need the name and exact time." The elevator chimes. As the doors open, I hear Priya say, "Security is opening the test account now." I step inside. Lena doesn't follow. The doors begin to close, framing Owen between 2 narrowing strips of brushed steel. He is speaking quickly, one hand raised, his voice pitched in that warm, reasonable register that has carried him through investor meetings, failed demos, and every Mercer family dinner since I married Daniel. Then Priya says, "Those are real gate codes." The doors meet. In the lobby, I give the receptionist the company credit card from my wallet. She glances at it as though I've handed her a tooth. "Do you need parking validation?" she asks. "I've worked here 6 years, Cindy." I know. Yes, please. She stamps the ticket so hard the machine skids across the counter. Outside, the late September heat sits on the parking lot like a lid. My car is at the far end because Owen had reserved the shaded spaces for the client. By the time I reach it, sweat has pasted my blouse between my shoulder blades. I put the tool bag in the passenger seat. Then I stand there with the door open, unable to remember whether I came down to level 3 or level 4. My phone vibrates. Daniel. I let it ring until the screen goes dark. It starts again immediately. I answer. "Hi. What happened?" "No, hello. Owen has already called him." "I was fired. I know that part. He said you forced a shutdown in the middle of acceptance. I refused to activate 2 connections. He says the migration discrepancy was a reporting issue. The test account contains live tenant data. There's a pause. I hear a pneumatic wrench in the background. Daniel is at a job site, probably inside the old bottling plant his firm is converting into offices. He said you hadn't confirmed that." "I confirmed it yesterday." "Then why didn't you tell him?" "I told him at 6:14 last night, again at 7:03, and in the launch hold at 7:26 this morning." Daniel exhales through his nose. It is the sound he makes when a contractor has put a wall 6 inches from where the drawings place it. "Okay," he says. "I'm not accusing you." "You asked why I didn't tell him." "I'm trying to understand." "Ask Owen." I did. He's dealing with security right now. So am I, apparently. Mara. The way he says my name makes me sit down. I close the car door but don't start the engine. Heat gathers around me. "What exactly was in there?" he asks. Names, phone numbers, unit numbers, delinquency status, emergency contacts, gate codes. Jesus. The password was shared with the demo contractors in June. Are the gates live? No, I kept the bridge off. And notifications? Off. His relief is immediate and painful. Good. That's good. It's the reason he fired me. He says it's because you wouldn't give a launch date. I gave him one. Friday if engineering scrubbed the database. Today if he accepted live data in a shared test account. He chose today and decided I was the problem for describing what today meant. A truck backs out nearby, beeping in patient intervals. Daniel says, "Come home, we'll sort it out." We? You know what I mean. I do. He means he will call Owen after Owen has cooled down. He will translate me into words his brother can hear. He will translate Owen back into something less insulting. This has worked often enough to become a family service. Nobody admits Daniel performs. I have to go, I say. Where? I don't know yet. Don't talk to Hearthland until we understand the legal. I hang up. The car starts on the second try. A yellow smear from the marker runs along the side of my index finger. At a red light, I rub it with a receipt, but the wax only spreads. My access to Gatewise disappears before I reach the highway. Email first, then messaging, then the project system. Each application flashes a different, polite version of the same fact. Session expired. Credentials invalid. Contact your administrator. At 2:18, a text arrives from an unknown number. This is Gatewise Counsel. Please preserve all company materials and do not contact clients or employees. Formal notice to follow. At 2:21, Owen texts me directly. Do not make this worse than it is. I read that one twice. 6 years earlier, Gatewise had been 4 folding tables inside a converted tire warehouse. Owen had recruited me after watching me rescue a gate installation at a Mercer-owned storage property outside Tulsa. The installer had blamed the network vendor had blamed the controller, and the property manager had blamed the rain. I found that somebody had entered the controller's serial number with 2 digits reversed. Owen had leaned against the office counter, soaked through, grinning. "You like being the only adult in the room?" he asked. "No, I like going home." He offered me a job before the gate finished opening. Back then, his impatience felt clean. He hated waste, ceremonial meetings, and software that required 12 clicks to do what should take 2. He could watch a property manager work for 10 minutes and identify the exact screen ruining her day. He also remembered birthdays, sent soup when people were sick, and once drove through an ice storm because a customer had been locked out of her own facility. The trouble was that every good instinct in Owen eventually became permission. I drive home by surface streets to avoid paying attention at highway speed. Daniel's truck isn't in the driveway. The house is quiet except for the refrigerator making its soft, grinding sound. I set the tool bag on the kitchen table. Without my laptop, it looks ridiculous. A faded square of canvas with compartments for problems I no longer have permission to solve. I empty my pockets: keys, wallet, parking ticket, half a peppermint, the visitor Wi-Fi card from Hearthland. Then I find a folded piece of paper in the back pocket of my slacks. It is not company property. It's the carbon copy from my personal receipt book, the kind I use when a property manager hands me a cabinet key or an old controller card. Yesterday, at 5:42 p.m., Nia Brooks had borrowed my yellow China marker during the migration review. On the receipt line, as a joke, she wrote, "One ancient pencil. Value. Mara will decide." Below that, because we had run out of room on the whiteboard, I had written the 3 record totals Nia read aloud. Sanitized source, 6,000. Test display, 6,000. Database count, 24,402. I sit down. At 6:03 yesterday, Nia had stared at the 3rd number and said, "Maybe the old imports weren't cleared." Whose imports? The demo team used Hearthland's production copy for performance testing. Used it how? She had glanced toward the open office. Owen stood 2 rows away with headphones around his neck, talking to sales. "He said the scrub was taking too long," she whispered. "Rafe loaded the copy to test search speed. It was supposed to be deleted after." Was it? Nia clicked into the storage report, then stopped moving. I took the yellow marker from her and circled 24,402 on the printed count sheet. "Don't touch anything else," I said. By 6:14, Owen had my first warning. At 6:32, engineering said a clean rebuild would take until Friday. At 6:47, Owen asked whether Hearthland would actually be harmed if the test account remained internal for one launch review. I told him the account was not internal. 12 demo contractors had used it. At 7:03, I put that in writing. At 7:11, he called my insistence procedural theater. At 7:26 this morning, I submitted the launch hold. I leave the receipt on the table and wash my hands. Dish soap doesn't remove the yellow wax, neither does olive oil. I am scrubbing with the rough side of a sponge when Daniel comes in. He drops his keys in the blue bowl by the door and looks at the tool bag. "So it's true," he says. "What part?" "That they walked you out." "I walked myself." He takes off his work boots, lining them against the wall. Daniel organizes objects when people become difficult. Owen says Hearthland froze the launch. They should. He also says their security team found the records because you left the account in an unresolved state. I turn off the faucet. Daniel looks exhausted. There's plaster dust in his hair and a shallow cut across one knuckle. "Is that what you think?" I ask. I think Owen is panicking. That wasn't my question. He pulls out a chair but doesn't sit. His eyes land on the carbon copy. What's that? A receipt. For what? A pencil. He reads the numbers. His mouth tightens. Owen knows about this. He was sent the same counts. Can you prove that? I could this morning. He finally sits. His lawyer is drafting a severance agreement. 6 months' salary, maybe 8. Benefits through the end of the year. In exchange for what? I haven't seen it. But you know there's an exchange. There's always language, Mara. Shared process failure? He looks up too quickly. I laugh once. It comes out thin and ugly. He already gave you the phrase. He's trying to contain damage. He fired me in front of the client so he could point at the person leaving the room. I know how it looked. You know what he did. Daniel rubs the cut on his knuckle. If you turn this into a fight, he will turn it into a war. He already picked the room and brought an audience. The doorbell rings. Neither of us moves at first. A courier stands outside with a padded legal envelope. Daniel signs for it. The package is addressed to me, but he holds it for a second before passing it over. Inside are the termination notice, instructions for returning company equipment, a reminder of my confidentiality obligations, and a severance agreement with yellow tabs placed beside every signature line. 8 months' salary, health coverage through December, a neutral employment reference. On page 4, the agreement says, I acknowledge joint responsibility for deficiencies in test environment preparation and accept that my refusal to follow executive launch direction caused material disruption to the Heartland relationship. Daniel reads over my shoulder. Don't sign it tonight, he says. I'm not signing it tomorrow. You don't have to decide that yet. I just did. My phone vibrates on the table. Another unknown number, this one with a local area code. I expect Gatewise's attorney. Instead, a woman says, Mara, this is Evelyn Shaw. I'm calling personally. You are free to end the conversation whenever you choose. Daniel hears her name. His eyes close. Evelyn continues. I need one factual answer. Why were our outbound notifications disabled? I look at the severance agreement, at the yellow tabs, and at the faint wax still caught in the lines of my hand. Because the test account was holding live tenant records, I say, and I was the last person asked to authorize the send. What would have happened if you had? Every queued test notice would have gone to a real customer. How many? Just under 11,000. Silence settles on the line. Then Evelyn asks, and the gate codes? The bridge was off. Because of your launch hold? Yes. I hear papers shifting on her end. Thank you, she says. That's all I needed. She disconnects. Daniel stares at me from across the kitchen. What did you just do? He asks. I fold the severance agreement along the yellow tabs, once, then again. I answered the question Owen fired me for asking. Daniel's face changes. Not because he thinks I'm wrong, but because he can already see how many people will ask him to say I am. You talked to their COO without counsel. She asked why I disabled a queue. I told her. You gave her a number from the launch review, a Gatewise number, Heartland's customers. He walks to the sink and studies the sponge I left in the basin. This is exactly how Owen's gonna frame it. You're angry. So you're reaching into the project after you were terminated. I answered for my own decision. I understand that. Do you? He turns. I can understand you and still know my brother. That's the problem, Daniel. You say that like knowing him is weatherproofing. The refrigerator grinds on. His eyes drop to the severance agreement folded on the table. 8 months gives us room, he says. 8 months buys him my name under his version. It could also keep us from burning through savings while you look. I unfold the agreement and flatten page 4 with my palm. Read the sentence out loud. Mara, read it. He sits across from me. I watch his eyes follow the language. When he reaches the part about my refusal causing material disruption, his lips move but no sound comes out. That's not accurate, he says. It's very accurate. He just assigned the verbs carefully. Daniel leans back and presses his fingertips against his forehead. Let me talk to him. You already did. Let me talk to him when he's not standing in a burning room. He lit the room. He thought the data had been scrubbed. He knew it hadn't been verified. That's different. Yes, I say. That difference is why he'll sleep tonight. Daniel gets up, retrieves his boots, and carries them to the mudroom, though they were already where they belonged. He comes back without them. If I ask you not to send anything tonight, can you do that? I wasn't planning to. Not to Evelyn, not to anybody at Gatewise. I said I wasn't planning to. You're using that tone. What tone? The one where every answer is technically responsive. Despite myself, I smile. You married me with that tone. I thought it came with dental. For 3 seconds, we are ourselves again. Then his phone lights up on the table. Owen. Daniel lets it ring. I leave the severance agreement where it is and carry my tool bag upstairs. In the spare room, I take out everything Gatewise could reasonably claim belongs to it. 2 branded flash drives, both empty. A cable tester with the company asset sticker, a packet of tamper seals. I put them in the courier envelope with the termination letter. The brass cabinet key stays on my desk. It belongs to a storage property in Tulsa that closed 4 years ago. The manager told me to keep it because the lock was being replaced and because, in her words, anybody willing to lie on gravel in August had earned a souvenir. I open a blank notebook and write down what I remember in order. I don't copy messages from memory or invent quotation marks around approximations. I list times I can support from the carbon receipt, calendar alert still visible on my personal phone, and the parking stub Cindy stamped at 146. At the top of the page, I write, facts I can prove. Below it, things I only remember. The second list is longer. By midnight, Daniel is asleep on top of the covers. I lie beside him, listening to the occasional buzz of his phone against the nightstand. In the dark, he reaches for my wrist and holds it without waking. The next morning, Gatewise's attorney emails formal notice that my benefits will end on the last day of the month, unless I sign the agreement. That gives me 9 days. I spend the first one on hold with the insurance company. The second disappears into resumes. 6 years at one small company has made my work sound both enormous and suspiciously vague. Lead enterprise implementation means I have slept on the floor of a manager's office, while a vendor rebuilt a router. Managed cross-functional delivery means I have stood between a salesperson promising Wednesday and an engineer explaining physics. At noon, I receive an email from a recruiter I met at a conference. Heard you're exploring new opportunities. Would love to understand the circumstances around your departure before we proceed. Owen has moved quickly. I type 3 versions of an answer and delete all of them. Then I write that my employment ended after I declined to authorize a client launch, with unresolved data security exceptions. I offer references from prior customers and vendors. The recruiter responds 11 minutes later. Probably best to let things settle. I close the laptop. The quiet in the house feels expensive. At 3, I drive to Gatewise to return the equipment. Lena meets me in the lobby. She has brought a hand truck for a padded envelope and 1 cable tester. Policy, she says. Very load-bearing envelope. Her mouth twitches. She checks the items against a list on her tablet. 2 drives, seals, tester. Is that all? That's all I found. She glances towards Cindy, who is pretending not to listen while opening mail. Your plants are still upstairs. They belong to whoever kept watering them. That's me. Then congratulations on the pothos. Lena signs the receipt and offers me the screen. I read every line before adding my name. Owen held an all hands this morning, she says softly. I don't want you telling me internal information. I'm not. I'm telling you what was said about you. That distinction sounds like something she practiced in the elevator. He said you initiated a launch shutdown without exhausting internal escalation. He said the company is cooperating with Hearthland and that speculation could damage the review. Did he say why I initiated it? No. I hand back the tablet. He also said you left the team during the response. I was escorted out. I know. Lena, stop. Her eyes fill so quickly that I have to look at the ridiculous envelope on the hand truck. I keep thinking I should have followed you into the elevator, she says. And done what? Carried the bag? Been a person. You were a person. You got me validation. That was Cindy. From behind the counter, Cindy says, it was. We all laugh harder than the sentence deserves. It leaves Lena wiping under her eyes and Cindy suddenly fascinated by a utility bill. I touch Lena's elbow. Keep watering the pothos. Outside, a silver SUV occupies Owen's shaded space. Priya Desai stands beside it, speaking to the man from corporate security. A temporary badge hangs from her jacket. She notices me but doesn't approach. She simply gives one small nod. I return it and keep walking. That afternoon, Hearthland's counsel sends a written request for an interview. Gatewise is copied. The request says, Hearthland is investigating unauthorized placement of production tenant data in a non-production environment and wants to understand the controls surrounding outbound notifications and gate synchronization. 20 minutes later, Gatewise's attorney sends a separate warning that my confidentiality agreement remains in force. I print both emails. Daniel finds them beside the severance papers when he comes home. "You need your own lawyer," he says. "With what money?" "With ours. The one you wanted me to protect by signing." He pulls out a chair. "That was before Owen started threatening you for answering questions. It's called a reminder. It's a threat wearing loafers." I look at him. "That sounds like me." I've been taking notes. The lawyer we can afford rents an office behind a tax preparer and keeps a ceramic bulldog on her filing cabinet. Her name is Helen Park. She reads the severance agreement twice while I explain the launch. "Do you have company files?" she asks. "No." "Screenshots?" "No." "Did you forward email to yourself?" "No." "Record meetings?" "No." "Good for your former employer. Inconvenient for us." She taps page 4. "This isn't an admission that you exposed the data. It's an admission that your conduct disrupted the client relationship." My conduct did disrupt it. That honesty is going to make negotiating with you a joy. Can I speak to Hearthland? You can answer factual questions about your own actions. Gatewise may still claim some information is confidential. Hearthland may say it belongs to them. The lawyers can spend 6 months billing each other over which noun belongs to whom. What do you recommend? I recommend that you don't lie for 8 months of salary. I also recommend you understand 8 months of salary is real money. She asks for a $1,500 retainer. In the parking lot, I sit with the invoice on my knee and call our bank's automated line. The balance sounds smaller when a pleasant machine reads it aloud. I pay Helen. That evening, Owen sends a revised agreement. The money remains. The sentence changes from joint responsibility to shared accountability for communication failures. Daniel reads it at the kitchen counter. "He moved," he says. He changed the wrapping. It means he wants this finished. It means Hearthland doesn't believe him yet. Daniel sets the pages down. "Mom invited us to dinner Sunday." Of course she did. "She said she wants everybody to talk before lawyers make it impossible." Lawyers didn't fire me. I'm telling you what she said. Will Owen be there? Yes. I gather the pages into a straight stack. Then it isn't dinner. It's an ambush with potatoes. Daniel almost smiles, but he is too tired to complete it. On Friday morning, Helen and I meet with Hearthland's security team in a rented conference room at a hotel near the airport. Priya sits across from me with an incident timeline displayed on her laptop. Evelyn is not there. Gatewise's counsel joins remotely and interrupts twice in the first 5 minutes. Priya asks who disabled the notification queue. I did. Under what authority? Implementation sign-off was assigned to me in the launch responsibility matrix. Gatewise's attorney says, "We dispute that characterization." Priya shares the matrix on the screen. My name appears beside Customer Communication Release. Under it, Owen's name appears beside Executive Override. "Did Mr. Mercer override you?" she asks. "No." "Why not?" "He told engineering to proceed. He never completed the written override." Gatewise's attorney leans toward his camera. "Because Ms. Vance represented that she would resolve the matter operationally." I represented that engineering could rebuild by Friday. Priya changes the screen. A photograph fills it. The launch checklist lies on the conference table exactly where I left it. One broken piece of yellow marker rests across the bottom corner. Near the database sanitization line, someone has written, "Use prod copy if scrub takes past Tuesday." Beside the sentence are the initials OM. My stomach gives a small, hard turn. "Is that your handwriting?" Priya asks. "No. Do you recognize it?" "Yes." Gatewise's attorney says handwriting identification is outside Ms. Vance's expertise. "It's Owen's," I say. "Do the yellow circles belong to you?" "Yes." Priya zooms in. I had circled the failed sanitation check, the missing deletion certificate, and the discrepancy between displayed tenants and the database count. "Why yellow?" she asks. "It shows on black and white scans without covering the text." "And the broken marker." I snapped it when Owen fired me. For the first time, Priya's expression shifts. Not sympathy, recognition. She closes the photograph and asks whether anyone else saw the full database count before the launch. Nia Brooks, Gatewise's attorney, says, "Ms. Brooks has already provided an internal statement." Priya studies him. "We've requested the original ticket history underlying that statement. The company is gathering responsive materials." My phone is face down beside Helen's notebook. It vibrates once. I don't touch it until the interview ends. In the hallway, while Helen argues with the parking kiosk, I look at the screen. The message is from Nia. I didn't sign what he wrote. I submitted the original tickets through Hearthland's incident portal. "I'm sorry I waited." A second message appears before I can answer. "You covered me when the lockspan import failed. You said the log mattered more than who Owen was mad at." I remembered. I type carefully. "Do not send me files. Keep everything in the formal review." 3 dots appear, vanish, then return. Already did. When I step outside, the brass cabinet key in my tool bag knocks against the cable adapter with each step. It makes the same small, stubborn sound all the way to the car. Helen reads Nia's messages twice, then hands my phone back. "You gave the correct response," she says. "That sounds ominous." "It's rare. I wanted to mark the occasion." The parking kiosk rejects her card again. She slaps the screen with the flat of her hand. "Your legal strategy is stronger than your parking strategy." My parking strategy is escalating. She pays at the hotel desk, then tells me not to contact Nia again unless Nia's lawyer approves it. I tell her Nia doesn't have a lawyer. She works for a man revising history while security audits his servers. She should consider one. By Saturday, the original ticket history has reached Hearthland. Helen receives a preservation notice listing the records under review, and I recognize the ticket numbers without seeing their contents. One covers the production copy, another covers the missing deletion certificate. A third is my launch hold. At 10:17 that morning, Gatewise withdraws its severance offer. The letter claims I may have violated confidentiality obligations by disclosing internal operational information to Hearthland. It also says Gatewise is investigating whether I encouraged employees to bypass authorized reporting lines. "Did you encourage Nia?" Daniel asks. We're sitting at the kitchen table with Helen on speaker. The courier envelope is gone, but its dust outline remains on the wood. I told her not to send me anything and to use the formal review. Helen says, "Which is why we keep that message." Daniel rubs both hands over his face. "They can just take the severance away?" "They can decline to offer money," Helen says. "We can disagree about why. Disagreement is the national crop of lawyers." "What about her benefits?" "Those were tied to the agreement. Cobra remains available." Daniel looks at the insurance estimate. "At this price, does a doctor move in with us?" "Only on weekdays," Helen says. I appreciate the joke. Daniel does not. Helen sends Gatewise a response denying both claims and requesting that Owen correct the statement he made to employees about my departure. She also asks for confirmation that he will provide a neutral reference. His attorney answers before dinner. Gatewise stands by its communications. I print that one too. Our printer has started pulling paper crooked, so every page emerges with a faint gray streak down the right side. By Sunday, my evidence stack looks as though it has been dragged past a dirty wall. Daniel wants to cancel dinner at his mother's. I insist we go. You called it an ambush with potatoes, he says. I'm hungry. That's a terrible reason to enter an ambush. It worked for Troy. I'm almost sure it didn't. Diane Mercer lives in the same brick ranch where Daniel and Owen grew up. She has replaced every major appliance but refuses to replace the kitchen cabinets because, according to her, oak does not become less oak because people start liking white paint. When we arrive, the dining table is set for 4. Owen's coming alone, Diane says. Celia has a migraine. Daniel and I exchange a look. Owen's wife has remarkably well-timed migraines, but I envy her commitment to them. Diane hugs me longer than usual. She smells like face powder and rosemary. I made the roast you like. I like all your roasts. That's because I season food. She says it loudly enough for Daniel to hear. He opens the refrigerator and takes out a beer without asking. Owen arrives 20 minutes late carrying a bakery pie. He looks terrible. His beard has grown unevenly along his jaw, and there are purple half-moons under his eyes. He kisses Diane's cheek, puts the pie on the counter, and nods to me as though we are meeting at an airport rental desk. Mara. Owen. He opens the refrigerator, sees the gap where Daniel's beer was, and takes sparkling water instead. Diane seats us according to a logic meant to appear accidental. Owen and I are across from each other. Daniel sits between us. She begins passing bowls before everyone is settled. For 1 hour, she says, we are going to eat like a family. Owen spoons carrots onto his plate. That was my plan. You arrived with counsel's letter in my inbox, I say. Diane closes her eyes. Mara. He withdrew 8 months of severance yesterday. I did not personally send a letter, Owen says. Then we can blame the mail. Daniel sets down the serving fork. Can we get through grace? We don't say grace, Owen says. Tonight seemed like a good time to develop faith. Diane puts both palms on the table. Her wedding ring clicks against the wood. I asked you here because what is happening to the company is happening to this family. I look at the framed photographs on the sideboard. Owen in a graduation gown, Daniel beside a half-restored motorcycle, the 4 of us at Gatewise's 5th anniversary party. In that picture, Owen has one arm around my shoulders and is holding up 5 fingers with the other. He looks proud of me. I remember that he was. What happened to the company happened at the company, I say. Owen's fork stops. 42 people work there, he says. 42 people who had no involvement in a database decision are now wondering whether Hearthland walks, whether investors pull the next tranche, whether payroll changes. That context matters. It mattered when you told engineering to use the production copy. I told them to use it for performance testing under the expectation that it would be deleted. You launched without proof it was deleted. I made a risk decision based on the information I had. I gave you the information. You gave me 17 warnings in 6 hours. 4 were material. The rest made it harder to see which 4. Diane looks from him to me. Is that true? Yes, I say. Owen sits back, surprised. I warn about things before I know which ones will turn into disasters, I continue. That's what implementation is. If you want only the important warning, you have to wait until afterward. He presses his thumb against the rim of his plate. Priya told our investors we had a governance failure, he says. Not a security incident, a governance failure. Do you understand what that phrase does to a company our size? Yes. I built the first version of Gatewise at this table. Daniel says, you built it in Mom's garage. The router was at this table. The extension cord was at this table. Both of you stop, Diane says. Owen pushes his plate away. I have slept 11 hours since Tuesday. I have engineering rebuilding 3 environments. I personally called every demo contractor and verified deletion of cached exports. I got our insurer on notice before Hearthland's attorney did. I'm fixing it. I believe him. That is the infuriating part. Owen is excellent after impact. Give him smoke and broken glass, and he becomes focused, generous, tireless. Ask him to pause before the collision, and he treats the brake pedal as an insult. Then fix what you said about me, I tell him. His eyes narrow. What do you want? Tell the staff I was terminated after I refused to authorize connections because the test account had unresolved live data. You want me to announce that to 42 frightened employees? I want you to stop telling them I abandoned a response you removed me from. I said you initiated a shutdown without exhausting escalation. You were the escalation. You wanted veto power. I had sign-off authority. You had responsibility. You turned it into sovereignty. Diane reaches for the gravy boat, realizes nobody needs it, and sets it back down. Daniel says, "The Matrix listed Mara for communications release." Owen looks at him. "You weren't in the room." "I've seen it." "You've seen what she and her lawyer chose to show you." The document came from Hearthland's review. Owen's face hardens. "So she's bringing you into privileged meetings now?" "Stop talking about me like I'm a pipe she used to leak into the family," Daniel says. The room goes quiet. Owen looks at his brother for a long moment, then turns back to me. "I offered you 8 months. You offered to rent my agreement. I offered you more than most people in your position would ever see. My position? Terminated for refusing executive direction." Diane whispers his name. He doesn't slow down. "I gave you that job when your resume was 3 contract projects and a facilities certificate. I let you build a department. I defended your budget every quarter. You were useful until you forgot who gave you the opportunity." The sentence lands more softly than the firing did. Maybe because I have heard pieces of it for years in other sentences. My budget, my team, my seat at his table. Everything I built still carried a tiny tag with Owen's name on it. Daniel's chair scrapes backward. "We're leaving," he says. Diane stands. "Daniel, please." He takes my coat from the hook by the door. Owen says, "Sit down. We are finally being honest." Daniel puts my coat over my shoulders. "You're being honest about something. It just isn't the database." At the door he turns. "What about the 38,000? He asks. Owen blinks. "What?" "The equipment loan. You said you'd repay it when the Hearthland deposit cleared." Diane looks sharply at Owen. She did not know. Owen's mouth tightens. "If the deposit doesn't clear, the repayment schedule changes." "There is no schedule. There is an email and 4 years of you saying after the next big contract." "We can discuss that separately." "No, we can't. I'm done letting separately mean whenever it costs you nothing." Outside, Daniel walks past our car and keeps going to the end of the block. I follow. Cold air catches the back of my throat. "I'm sorry," I say. "For what?" "The loan." "You told me not to make it." "I told you to get terms." "You said, your brother thinks a handshake is a financial instrument." "That sounds like me." He laughs, but his eyes are wet. We stand under a streetlight while somebody's sprinkler ticks across a lawn already shining with rain. "I kept thinking if I translated him correctly, he'd become reasonable," Daniel says. "Maybe I was just making him easier for everyone else to survive." I put my hand into his coat pocket. He closes his fingers around mine. On Monday, Hearthland announces it will not proceed with the full rollout. Gatewise's agreement falls back to a 20-property pilot, subject to security remediation, external validation, and revised governance. The deposit is cut to a fraction of what Owen forecast. The news moves through the industry by lunch. 2 recruiters cancel interviews. A former vendor sends me a thumbs-up emoji followed, 3 minutes later, by a message saying he cannot discuss Gatewise. Cobra takes its first payment from our account. Helen's second invoice arrives the same afternoon. Nia is placed on paid administrative leave. She sends nothing to me. I learn about it because Gatewise's attorney cites her status in a letter accusing me again of interfering with employees. Helen reads the letter and says, "They have now accused you twice without identifying a single act." Does that help? It helps me write a sharper letter. Sharp letters remain, tragically, letters. 3 days later, she forwards me an invitation from Gatewise's outside investor representative. The investors want to discuss a limited remediation role. Hearthland has identified my participation as one acceptable way to restore confidence in the launch process. The meeting is held in Gatewise's small conference room, the one with the broken blind and a whiteboard permanently stained with a red cloud. Owen sits at the far end of the table. His attorney is beside him. Helen sits beside me with her ceramic bulldog's expression. Owen slides a document across the table. It is an offer to reinstate me as Director of Implementation, same salary, restored benefits, a retention bonus after 12 months. I read it once and slide it back. You wanted your job protected, he says. I wanted the client protected. The client wants you here. That's not the same thing. His attorney folds his hands. What would resolve this? I take a new yellow China marker from my bag and place it on the table. Consulting engagement, I say. Defined scope, written authority over launch controls, prepaid hours. My counsel approves the language. Owen looks at the marker, then at me. And if I say no, then you find somebody else whose warnings you haven't already taught yourself to ignore. Owen says no, not immediately. First, he studies the marker as though it might contain terms I haven't disclosed. Then he picks up the reinstatement offer and aligns it with the edge of the table. A consultant can advise, he says. A director is accountable. I was accountable when you overruled me. You're asking for authority without employment obligations. I'm asking for authority within one defined project. If I fail, you end the engagement. If you override a control, the client sees the override. His attorney glances at the investor representative. Owen notices. You brought us here to force this. The representative, a patient woman named Celeste Wu, closes her portfolio. Hearthland brought us here. I brought you options. My option is to pay a former employee 3 times her hourly rate to do the job I already paid her to do. Helen leans toward her notebook. 4 times. Owen looks at me. Prepaid, I remind him. His laugh has no humor in it. Absolutely not. I put the marker back in my tool bag and stand. Celeste says, Mara, give us a few minutes. My next 15 are billable. You haven't been retained, Owen says. Then they're mine. Helen and I leave. At the elevator, she presses the button once and keeps her finger near it, apparently prepared to escalate if the machine develops an opinion. You enjoyed that, I say. I enjoyed prepaid. 4 times? You have Cobra. The doors open. We step inside. Before they close, Celeste comes out of the conference room. Hearthland is sending formal conditions this afternoon, she says. Please don't commit elsewhere until you see them. I'm not committing anywhere. That may be the most expensive sentence I hear today. The formal conditions arrive at 4:38. Hearthland will continue the 20-property pilot only if Gatewise appoints an independent security lead with authority to stop deployments, completes external validation, and gives Mara a defined role in rebuilding the launch process, or proposes an equivalent professional acceptable to Hearthland. Owen proposes 2 equivalents. Hearthland rejects both. The first is a respected auditor who has never implemented a physical gate system. The second is Gatewise's new vice president of customer success, who once asked me whether encryption would make database searches look blurry. By Wednesday, Helen has a signed consulting agreement. My hours are prepaid in blocks of 40. I control notification and controller activation during remediation. Any executive override must be written, time-stamped, and visible to Hearthland. I retain no access after the project ends. Gatewise corrects my employment record to state that I was terminated during a disputed launch hold, and Owen issues an internal notice explaining that I did not abandon the incident response. He refuses to apologize. I don't make it a condition. When I return, Lena has put my pathos on a wheeled cart with a card that says, Temporary Consultant Vegetation. She leaves it outside the small conference room assigned to the remediation team. You said it belonged to whoever watered it, she says. It does. I'm lending it to you. Cindy has also prepared a temporary badge. The photograph is the same swollen-eyed one. "You couldn't use a new picture?" "I could," she says. She hands me the badge. It reads, Mara Vance Contractor. I clip it on. The office feels smaller than it did when I belonged to it. People lower their voices as I pass. Some smile too brightly. Others develop urgent interest in their monitors. On the far wall, the launch countdown has been replaced by a printed sign reading, Security Remediation in Progress. Owen's internal notice appears in everyone's inbox at 9. It is 4 careful paragraphs. He says my access was revoked as part of a personnel action, preventing me from participating in the response. He confirms that my launch hold kept tenant notifications and gate synchronization disabled. He does not say the termination was wrong. At 9:07, Lena sends me a single period through the company messenger. I send one back. Nia returns from administrative leave that afternoon. She enters the conference room carrying a laptop and a paper cup with a cracked plastic lid. There's a dark stain down the front of her cardigan. "Strong entrance," I say. The lid sensed weakness. She sets the cup on the floor, far from every electronic device. Owen has assigned her to the remediation team because she knows the migration pipeline. Hearthland's independent security lead, Marcus Bell, approved her return after reviewing the original tickets. Marcus is compact, gray-haired, and uninterested in anyone's preferred vocabulary. On our first morning, Owen refers to the database copy as test material. Marcus says production data. Owen says production-sourced material, Sesson production data. After a pause, Owen nods. Production data. That is how the work begins. We trace the copy through 4 systems. Rafe, the engineer who loaded it, followed Owen's instruction to use production for performance testing. He ran the sanitation job afterward, but it failed when a database snapshot exceeded its storage allowance. The visible tenant table refreshed with 6,000 synthetic records. The underlying search index and 2 recovery snapshots retained all 24,402 records. The dashboard looked clean because the dashboard was only looking at the clean part. Rafe documented the failed job in a ticket, tagged Nia, and moved to another release after Owen changed the migration priority. Nia added the discrepancy to the review. I circled it. No single person possessed the whole failure until the launch room, when Owen decided the pieces were noise. We delete the snapshots under Hearthland's supervision. Priya verifies the hashes before and after. Gatewise rotates every shared credential, removes contractor access, and builds a synthetic data generator that creates fake tenants without borrowing fragments of real ones. Nia names the first sample tenant Norma L. Person. Subtle, I tell her. She has an emergency contact named Definitely Fake. Marcus looks over from his laptop. Make it less funny. Nia changes it to Tessa Sample and sighs. The gate controller bridge gets its own service account, separate approval, and a visible red status bar whenever it is disabled. Notifications require 2 sign-offs. Database sanitation produces a deletion certificate that cannot be bypassed by closing a ticket. Owen works beside us more often than I expect. He rewrites the property manager workflow himself when the new controls add 6 unnecessary clicks. He catches a flaw in the synthetic data that would have made every sample lease begin on the 1st of the month, producing unrealistic billing tests. He brings dinner during the 2nd external scan and remembers that Nia hates cilantro. He also tries 3 times to move the pilot review forward. The first request comes through Celeste. I show her the incomplete access audit. She withdraws it. The second arrives as a calendar invitation titled Readiness Discussion. I decline it with the outstanding conditions attached. The third time, Owen stands in the remediation room holding 2 coffees. Priya's team can validate the remaining logs in parallel, he says. They can. So we can review Thursday. The contractor credential report won't be final. It's one report. It's the report showing whether every person who had the old password has lost access. He puts 1 coffee beside me. It has cinnamon on the foam the way I order it. We called all 12, he says. Calls aren't revocation. They confirm deletion. Deletion isn't revocation. His mouth draws tight. This is what I mean. Every noun becomes a gate. Some nouns are gates. He stares at me, then pulls the coffee back toward himself and drinks it despite hating cinnamon. Friday? He asks. If the report clears. On Thursday afternoon it clears. I approve the review. Daniel does not come to the office while I'm there. He deals with Owen separately at Helen's insistence and with a simple promissory note drafted by another attorney. The $38,000 becomes monthly payments beginning after the pilot's first invoice, whether Hearthland expands or not. Owen signs after arguing over the interest rate for 2 days. Diane sends us half a roast in a glass dish and refuses to serve as courier for any more documents. On masking tape across the lid, she writes, "Food only." Daniel sticks the tape to the refrigerator after we finish the roast. The night before the final review, I stay at Gatewise until nearly 10. Nia and Rafe run the migration from a sanitized source, while Marcus watches the audit stream. 6,000 synthetic tenants enter the account. No hidden index grows behind them. Every notification remains trapped in a local sync. Every gate command routes to a simulator sitting on a metal cart in the corner. The simulator is an old controller cabinet from a closed Tulsa property. When Rafe cannot open it, I reach into my tool bag and take out the brass key. "You have a key for everything?" he asks. "Only obsolete things." The lock turns. Inside, the controller lights blink in sequence. Nia sends a test command. A relay clicks, and the miniature gate arm mounted on top rises 6 inches. Marcus checks the audit trail. Approved by Brooks, released by Vance, executed by service account. Owen stands in the doorway. "Again," he says. We run it again. The final review takes place in the same polished launch room where he fired me. Hearthland's executives occupy the same side of the table. Priya sits beside Evelyn. Marcus joins by video. Celeste and Gatewise's new independent security lead sit behind Owen, close enough to make the revised authority visible without discussing it. My printed checklist rests in front of me. The 2 broken pieces of the old marker are gone. Priya retained them with her incident photographs, then returned them to Helen in a clear evidence sleeve. They are in my tool bag now. I use the new marker to circle each completed control as its owner speaks. Rafe presents the migration totals. Nia demonstrates tenant search. Priya chooses a record at random and asks to see its source. Nia traces it to the synthetic generator, including the seed that created the name, address, unit, and payment history. "Open the test account directly," Evelyn says. Priya does. Security opens the test account again. This time, the names belong to nobody. The phone numbers route nowhere. The gate codes operate only the simulator. The notification queue is disabled, and a banner identifies who disabled it, when, and under which approval. Priya attempts to sign in with the old contractor credential. Access revoked. She checks the recovery snapshots. Empty. Then she opens the override log. Owen's name appears as the executive authorized to request one. Beside it, in plain text, are the people who must be notified if he does. Evelyn takes off her glasses. "This is what we asked for the first time," she says. Owen looks at the screen. Yes. No explanation follows. He has learned, at least for this hour, that explanation can become another form of escape. One exception remains. A temporary validation credential will expire in 30 days, but the assigned owner field is blank. I circle the line in yellow. Owen sees it. Marcus can own that. Marcus's voice comes through the speaker. I can. Owen writes Marcus's name, dates the correction, and initials it. I slide the checklist across the table. Executive acceptance. His eyes meet mine. For a second, I can see the old argument forming. The shortcut, the schedule, the number of people depending on him, the fact that he has already fixed so much. Then he takes the marker from my hand and signs beneath the conditions. Evelyn signs after him. Hearthland approves the 20-property pilot. The full rollout remains suspended. Gatewise's valuation is revised downward. Its next investment arrives in smaller stages, and Marcus's replacement will report to the investors as well as Owen. The company survives. So does the product. Owen keeps his title and loses the freedom to treat it as universal clearance. After the client leaves, he finds me packing the checklist into my bag. "You got what you wanted," he says. "I got the pilot approved. You know what I mean." I zip the side compartment. "Do I?" He looks through the glass wall at the office. Nia is helping Rafe dismantle the simulator. Lena wheels my pathos toward the elevators. "I was wrong to fire you in that room," he says. "It is not the whole apology. It is more than I expected." "You were wrong before the room," I say. He nods once. "Come back, not as a consultant. Build the department the way you think it should work." "You already offered me that." "I'm offering without the agreement you rejected." "I know." "Then why are you packing?" "Because I can make you respect a contract. I can't make you respect me every morning." His face closes, then opens again more tiredly. "What happens when the pilot expands? You hire someone good, give her authority before she has to prove she deserves it by stopping you. And you?" My scope ends Friday. He looks at the fresh yellow marks on the checklist. "You always did like a clean ending." "No," I say. "I like written ones." A few months later, my implementation practice occupies 2 rooms above a locksmith shop. The floor tilts toward the windows and the radiator knocks whenever someone downstairs uses the key-cutting machine. Daniel mounts the 2 broken pieces of the old yellow marker in a narrow frame. I hang it beside my desk, over the shelf where the brass Tulsa key rests. The new marker lies flat on my first client's launch checklist, worn smooth along one side. He points to the printed page. "Why do you still use paper for the final review?" I pick up the marker and circle the one line nobody has signed. "Because this is where people tell you who they are."